As an avid hiker and amateur documentarian, I've always sought out the most remote and untouched corners of the world. The more isolated and untamed the wilderness, the more it called to me. So when I heard about the vast, rugged beauty of the Navajo Nation, I knew I had to experience it for myself. I packed my gear, charged my camera batteries, and set out for what I believed would be another unforgettable adventure. I was born in a small town in upstate New York, where nature was always at my doorstep. My parents were both teachers, and they often took me on hikes during weekends and holidays. Those early experiences instilled in me a deep love for the wilderness and a curiosity about the world beyond our small town. I started documenting my hikes in college, first with a simple camera and later with more sophisticated equipment. My YouTube channel, Jake's Wilderness Adventures, had garnered a modest following of fellow outdoor enthusiasts, and I was eager to share my latest journey with them. The first few days in the Navajo Nation were everything I'd hoped for. The landscape was a breathtaking mosaic of mesas, canyons, and ancient ruins. The air was crisp and dry, carrying with it the whispers of countless stories and legends. Every corner I turned revealed a new wonder, from hidden waterfalls to ancient petroglyphs. My camera captured it all, and I couldn't wait to edit the footage and share it with my audience. But it wasn't long before I began to feel a sense of unease, a prickling at the back of my neck that I couldn't quite shake. It started with the tracks. On my third night, as I set up camp under a canopy of stars, I noticed strange prints in the soft earth around my tent. They were unlike any animal tracks I'd seen before, too large to be a coyote, too irregular to be a deer. They seemed to shift in shape, as if made by a creature that couldn't decide what it was. I shrugged it off, attributing it to my lack of familiarity with the local wildlife. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and the world turned to shadow, the strange noises began. At first, they were distant and faint, like whispers carried on the wind. But as the night deepened, they grew louder and more insistent. It was an eerie, guttural sound, halfway between a growl and a moan, that sent chills racing down my spine. I told myself it was just the wind playing tricks on me, or perhaps some nocturnal animal. Still, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread. The next day, I met Thomas. I had wandered into a small, remote village nestled among the hills, seeking directions and perhaps some local stories to enrich my journey. Thomas was an elderly Navajo man with kind eyes and a weathered face that spoke of a life lived close to the land. We struck up a conversation, and I mentioned the strange tracks and noises. Thomas' expression darkened. "You must be careful," he said in a voice laced with gravitas. "This land is old, and it holds many secrets. There are things here that are not meant to be understood by outsiders." Intrigued, I pressed him for more information. That's when he told me about the Skinwalkers. According to Navajo legend, a Skinwalker is a type of witch that has the ability to transform into, possess, or disguise themselves as animals. They are malevolent beings, driven by dark purposes and capable of great harm. Thomas spoke of them with a mix of fear and respect, as if acknowledging their existence was both a warning and a form of protection. "Whatever you do," Thomas warned, "do not speak of them lightly. And if you see one, run. Do not try to understand it, just run." I thanked Thomas for his advice, though I couldn't help but feel a twinge of skepticism. As a man of the modern world, I found it hard to believe in such fantastical stories. But the fear in Thomas' eyes was genuine, and it stayed with me as I continued my hike. That night, I camped near a rocky outcrop, the village now miles behind me. The unease returned with the setting sun, the strange noises louder and more distinct than before. I tried to sleep, but every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig jolted me awake. And then, I saw it. A coyote, standing at the edge of my campfire's light. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, reflecting the flames in a way that seemed almost human. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. The coyote didn't move, didn't blink. It just watched me with an unnerving intensity. Remembering Thomas' warning, I tried to ignore it, turning my back to the fire and pulling my sleeping bag tighter around me. But the coyote's presence lingered, a palpable tension in the air. I barely slept that night, my dreams haunted by shadowy figures and disjointed animal forms. The next morning, the coyote was gone, but the sense of being watched remained. I continued my hike, determined to push through the fear and complete my journey. But the deeper I went into the wilderness, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy that prickled my skin and made every hair on my body stand on end. It was late afternoon when I stumbled upon another set of tracks, these even more bizarre than the last. They were scattered around a clearing, overlapping in a chaotic pattern that made no sense. As I crouched to examine them, a sudden chill ran through me, and I felt the unmistakable sensation of eyes on my back. I spun around, and there it was again, the coyote. But this time, it wasn't alone. A second figure stood beside it, tall and gaunt, cloaked in shadows. I couldn't make out its features, but the malevolent energy it radiated was unmistakable. Panic surged through me, and I bolted, abandoning my pack and sprinting blindly through the trees. The forest seemed to close in around me, branches clawing at my skin, roots tripping my steps. The sounds of pursuit were all around me, snarls, growls, and that same eerie, guttural noise. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't dare slow down. Thomas' warning echoed in my mind, do not try to understand it. Just run. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually, exhaustion forced me to stop. I collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath, my heart hammering in my chest. The forest was silent, the oppressive weight lifted. But I knew better than to let my guard down. I had to keep moving. With no pack, no map, and no supplies, I wandered through the wilderness, driven by sheer survival instinct. Night fell again, and the fear returned with it. I found a small cave and crawled inside, praying it would offer some protection. Sleep was a fleeting, restless affair, haunted by nightmares of the coyote and the shadowy figure. When dawn broke, I forced myself to continue, driven by a desperate hope of finding a way out. The landscape seemed to shift and twist around me, as if the very land was conspiring to keep me trapped. I was disoriented, dehydrated, and on the brink of collapse when I stumbled onto a dirt road. Salvation came in the form of an old pickup truck. The driver, a weathered rancher named Bill, took one look at me and helped me into the cab without a word. As we drove towards civilization, I recounted my ordeal, my voice trembling with exhaustion and lingering fear. Bill listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he simply nodded. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "This land has a way of testing people. Some don't make it back." I never returned to the Navajo Nation. The experience left me with a deep respect for the land and its mysteries, and a healthy fear of what might be lurking in the shadows. I still hike, still seek out the wild and untamed, but I carry Thomas' warning with me always. Some things are not meant to be understood, only respected. And as for the Skinwalker, whether it was real or just a product of my fear and exhaustion, I can't say. But one thing is certain, the wilderness holds many secrets, and not all of them are meant for us to uncover. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.